Guys, welcome back to Quick Notes with Chris on. Today we're going to be talking about the book Unoffendable by Brant, Hansen. It's a really sort of religious orientated book, but I definitely think there is a deeper meaning behind it that you can certainly apply towards your life. And it basically proposes the questions that rather than Christians being seen as a type of religious type of people who are constantly offended by everything, they should be a type of people that never get offended by anything. They're in fact unoffendable people. And essentially types of the teachings and reasons as to why you should look towards aiming towards being a Christian that's unoffendable. Now, I would look towards expanding from that idea and saying that everyone should look towards being unoffendable. Especially nowadays in society, seeing how though everything is politically correct, it's very difficult to move throughout the political climate without necessarily offending any type of person. And it's very difficult to get your idea across, especially if it's even slightly controversial or out of the social norm, that doesn't look towards offending someone, some group, or a race of people. I definitely think that you should take into account people's personal feelings and personal views and personal opinions. However, the fact that everyone does get so easily offended is certainly a problem whenever you're trying to communicate a point. Jordan Peterson talks about how in order for the pursuit of truth, you have to have the right to offend, and more power to you if you are. And I highly suggest that rather than taking power away from those who are trying to seek the truth, we should more so take away the power of those who have the rights to be offended. Because in truth, you choose whether or not you're going to be offended. We're not entitled to get offended or stay angry. It is the number one problem that we have in today's society. So many people feel obligated to feel bad rather than whether or not they truly do. I know me, definitely growing up, there were so many injustices that I witnessed that I didn't necessarily feel bad about, but I felt as though I should have, and so I decided to adopt that way of thinking, and I acted my way into that type of thinking, thought processing, and feeling overall. So I know firsthand that I understand that through physical thought and consciously trying to essentially feel as though you should feel offended, it does occur and it does end up shaping you as the person you are. And we have society, especially nowadays, have shaped that way. Everyone's trying not to step on certain people's toes, and it's very difficult to progress in terms of business, in terms of politics, or any level of influence unless you first don't want to look towards offending a certain amount of people. I know nowadays so many more people are scrutinized for what they say in the media, what they say on Facebook, and things that you've written in statuses 20 years ago, even in some cases, can end up biting you back and maybe losing out on a multi-million-dollar job, or even getting you kicked out of a TV show in some cases, or in the most recent one, getting you removed from hosting the Oscars. So why is it that we are such an offendable type of people at the moment? Well, the truth is, I think that it's because we are so more connected more than ever. Now, more people have so many more freedoms, have so many more opportunities to essentially get into whatever it is that they're looking towards being passionate about. And because of that, this abundance of choice has created an abundance of unnecessary problems that people like to create. And it's unfortunate. And the only thing that we can really consistently do is control our mindset and how we're affected by it. So I suggest you seriously do adopt the mindset of being unoffendable. See, you cannot be offended unless you give that person the power to do so to yourself. In terms of whether it's trust or someone that you idolize or someone that's genuinely your peer, generally speaking, you shouldn't let the average person who you don't know be able to offend you, no matter how outlandish, no matter how insane, no matter how much genuinely and fundamentally offensive what it is they're saying is. Because chances are, especially nowadays, people are doing it just to get a reaction. On top of that, whenever you're angry or whenever you're frustrated or whenever you're not in the correct mind space, it does not enhance your judgment. In fact, it clouds it. Normally when people are looking towards placing blame or angry at certain aspects of certain things that they've said, it takes away from their ability to focus on the solution because they're too focused on putting blame towards anything. Progress looks towards stopping. In terms of a team, especially, whenever someone looks towards being offended or trying to understand why someone offended something or something they said or something they did or an action that they committed, rather than focusing on the solution to the problem or the outcome that needs to be attained, they end up focusing on making sure that that person knows that they're offensive in terms of playing the blame game. It halts our society. It stops us allowing to progress. Now, I understand that there are certain times and certain periods where you should certainly stand up for the minority groups and people who are being oppressed. But I believe that there is a time and place for that, and on top of that, you can also do so without necessarily being offended yourself. If you do want to move towards the business climate, if you do want to look towards leading a team, you're going to have to risk offending people. But at the same time, you're going to have to risk being offended. Now, what you have to do is either consistently change whatever it is that you're looking towards doing work, or consistently change your mindset towards looking towards being bulletproof, where nothing can actually hurt you and everything is waterproof. I know personally I've experienced many times where there are certain aspects that I should have been offended by certain things that people say, but I didn't want to give that person power over me. Why is it that I allow this stranger or individual that I don't necessarily care about to offend my personal morals, to offend my personal beliefs. It doesn't actually really affect me anywhere near next to at all if this person doesn't believe in some of the things that I believe in, or believe certain types of people shouldn't have rights, and so on and so on and so on. It doesn't actually matter at all, especially if this person isn't living close to me, especially if this person isn't even in the same community as me. Now, I understand it might be degrading as a whole nation or a country or general state, but the facts are is that I'm not going to be the person to change his mind sooner rather than later, and it's a waste of my time to give him the time of day in order to let him know that I'm offended. Anger makes you less productive in the search of the problem. Whenever you're too focused on looking towards figuring out who it is to blame, or figuring out the person who has no right to offend you, or figure out the person who is offensive and the way that they're conducting themselves is incorrect, when all of that gets clouded, you lose focus on what it is that you're setting out to achieve, especially from a leadership perspective. When you're too focused on understanding of not trying to offend someone or not being offensive, sometimes it can take away from your authenticity. So what I highly suggest doing is, if you're constantly being hurt, if you're constantly being offended, or you feel as if you're always angry, maybe look towards your inner ego. Because the truth is, if someone's offending you, they're probably brushing up on the truth. There might be something that they say that you might think is true, either about yourself or about the topic. Now, if not, I do understand that there are genuinely offendable causes, offendable things that people can definitely say. But if you constantly feel as if you need to stand up for a type of person that you've never met, or you feel as if you're constantly being overcrowded by certain types of topics, certain types of opinions, maybe you will look towards your ego and keeping it in check. Because the truth is, the more you communicate with the vast majority of people, you'll find that a lot of people have bigoted views. A lot of people have views that aren't necessarily societally, politically correct. And the thing is, it's not your job to necessarily change that, especially through having an argument. It might be through your actions. You can inspire far more people through conducting yourself in a public spotlight the right way, rather than just choosing to be offended yourself. You're never going to get someone to change their personal views by being offended. You're only going to be able to change their views by showing a level of understanding and expressing a change in your person through your actions, values, beliefs, what it is that you say, especially if you're on a leadership style or a leadership stage. So what I highly suggest you do is, if you're a person who's constantly offended, more look towards checking your ego. The answer towards solving the outside problems is always to first solve your own. So maybe you should look towards, hey, is my ego something that's too large? Am I standing up for groups that I don't necessarily in a position to actually make a huge difference for? Maybe I should focus on developing myself before I start developing other people. You can develop and touch far more people through leading by example than just having arguments with people unnecessarily. I've seen it happen so often than not. You're never going to change a person's view by going there and attacking it face to face. You're only going to go up by showing understanding, love, progression, but most importantly, living by example. So to summarize, Unoffendable is highly orientated towards Christians. It genuinely says that Christians on top, at least specifically in America, are generally considered a religion where a bunch of people are consistently offended. It aims to basically saying that, look, and as a Christian, you guys should be seen as the most open-minded type of religious crew. We should be very open to discussions, even if it is opposing our views, and don't let it actually offend us. I suggest expanding that one step further. As an individual who's looking towards being in a leadership forum where someone is either on the stage, or you're leading your friends, or you're leading your business, whether it's in sport or ministry itself, you should definitely be the type of leader that doesn't get offended, if at all, unless it's literal things that are crushing your personal values, morals, and beliefs, things that you genuinely hold dear. And I think that the only time you should truly be offended is if you truly care about this individual. If this person is within your inner circle, if this person is a representation of you, a part of your team, and they're genuinely acting in a conduct that you don't want represented of yourself, that is when you should have a communication, or at least talk to that individual. And the way that you should do it is not through offense. It's through understanding. You don't know this person's upbringing. You don't know his or her experiences. The only way that you're going to get through to that person is if you're first calm yourself. No one responds better to yelling, and I've never heard a better quote than ever than, just because you're louder and you raise your tone does not make your argument more correct. And whenever we get into these arguments, or I see them on social media, it's always two people screaming at each other, trying to jam one type of philosophy down the other person's throat, and it never, ever, ever works out where the person goes, hey, you're right. Because it just doesn't happen. The truth is, the only way that someone is going to convert to a different ideal or change their way of belief is through understanding, love, progression, and looking towards leading them in the right direction through their actions. A discussion may initially make them open-minded, but specifically only if you yourself are open-minded. You have to be calm. There are so many different examples of it, and I definitely think you should look towards reading into it, but I highly suggest you read this book so you have a further understanding and in-depth knowledge, because there's so many aspects to this book that can't be explained in such a short video. But other than that, guys, that was quick notes with Chris on. I highly highly suggest you don't stop there when it comes to improvement. Keep looking onto the channel for other videos that we have, striving to put yourself in a better position for success. I'll see you in the next one.